Hey guys, welcome to Paul's Garage. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sanding. I'm going to show you the steps that you need to take. If this is a new project for you, this will be the first step in finishing. If you're refinishing an old piece of furniture, this is probably the second step. If you watch my previous video, it was on stripping furniture, getting it down to raw wood, and that's what we did. Sanding is necessary in either case. In the finishing case, it's necessary to get the raw wood into a suitable condition for the next step, with either stain or top coating. If you're refinishing, chemicals played a hard role on the surface of the wood. So what we're going to do is we need to get it down to an acceptable level. We need to smooth it out. We've raised some grain, and we've done a little bit of damage to the wood. There's still some little bit of paint spots that we need to get out. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to show you some different tools, although don't get excited because you really don't need a whole bunch of tools. If you're refinishing a project, just buying sandpaper, using it by hand, or an old wooden block to attach a sandpaper to will work just fine. So you don't need a lot of expensive product here. So okay, I'm also going to show you a little bit about the different steps in the sandpaper and the different grits that you use with each step. We're basically going to go to 3 to 4 grits. Okay. So I'll demonstrate that for you, and that's it. Let's get started. Okay, here we go. I've created a little project here just for demonstration purposes. Let's think of it as a shelf that you made in your shop. Hopefully you'll do better than I did on this one, but I did this intentionally. I didn't want it to be even because I wanted to show you this is where sanding comes in. So you can see that the side isn't even. You can see where I glued it together. There's some uneven. So we'll show you how to do that. Sanding happens in steps, and the first step is to even out your surfaces. If your project is as bad as this one, you want to start with a real rough grit. Sandpaper is measured in grits. The lower the grit, the more coarse the material. You can see that this is a piece of 60 grit sandpaper. It's really coarse. This is going to remove a lot of wood fast. So for a project like this, when we start, we're going to start with doing some repair work. And you can, by the way, make sure you check out the chart for that. Repair consists of, at a very coarse level, you'd probably want to use about a 60 to 80 grit. You could even go lower than that, but probably around an 80 grit. And it's primarily designed to level out uneven surfaces, to repair deep gouges where the wood has been gouged out, and you have to sand down a little bit. The next step would be 100 grit. 100 grit would be used for scratches. Pretty deep scratches in your project, for removing old paint. Not a whole heck of a lot of paint, just paint spots. Again, I would probably go to a chemical stripper if you had a lot of paint to remove, but it's for removing paint. So the repair process excuse me, is where it takes most of the energy and most of your effort, because we've got a lot of work to do. So again, we want to use a very coarse sandpaper so that we can get it down. Okay, let me show you what we just did here. And if you can remember how uneven that edge was, and now it's almost perfectly flat. The same thing with the joint in the wood, almost perfectly flat. Again, flat and flat. So that's the grunt work. That's where it comes. Thank heavens for a belt sander. However, keep in mind that, again, if you're refinishing a project, you're probably not going to have to do that much, so you don't need that heavy of equipment. Now, I don't think you can see it on video, but that 80 grit sandpaper put a lot of deep scratches in it. So the next thing would be to step up to this is a 120 grit sandpaper. And I'm going to just, here now I'm going to follow the grain. I don't have to do any more repair, so I'm just going to move with the grain. The key here is, rule number 2, is let the sandpaper do the work. I'm really not applying a lot of pressure. With each grit it gets a little easier. Again, all we're doing is now we're not doing any of that repair work. We're just removing the scratches that the 80 grit put into our project. Okay, I'm going to follow through with this. There's still some scratches again because I went across the surface rather than with the grain, so it put some deeper scratches in there. They have to be removed. I put my hand on top of it. I'm not pushing down on this. I'm using moderate pressure on this. Okay. I'm getting to the point where I need to be. Let's take a look and see what we got. Yeah, most of my deep scratches are gone. So that grit put some finer scratches in. So we now need to remove those. So I'm going to change papers real quick here. I'm going to go to a 180 grit. With the 180 grit, I'm going to do even a lighter sand. That's feeling pretty smooth now. If I'm going to stain this, I would stop here. I wouldn't go any higher than a 180 grit. What happens is if you polish, actually, when you get up into the higher grits of sandpaper, you're actually polishing the wood. And when you polish the wood, you fill in the little pores of the wood, and then the stain doesn't really accept very well. So we're going to stop at a 180. If you're going to put a polyurethane on, a shellac or a lacquer, or an epoxy finish, you really don't need to put any more. Those are film coats. They lay on top of the surface, and what a film coat does is when it doesn't penetrate into the wood, so it actually hides some of the scratches. So a 180 grit scratch is absolutely fine. Okay. Feels good. Feels nice and smooth. Surfaces are level. There's no high spots in it. Okay, the next step is we got to get the dust off. Dust is a woodworker's project nightmare. Dust will get into everything. It'll destroy your finish. So we have to do a good job on removing dust. I'm going to use a shop vac, and I'm going to be. I just have a brush attachment on it. It's going to get noisy for a few seconds, so just bear with me. I'll be right back with you. Okay, that should be followed by using a piece of tack cloth. Again, tack cloth is nothing more than a piece of cheesecloth that has a sticky substrate on it. You can buy it at any paint store, home center, hardware store. That pretty much takes all the dust out of it. Okay. All right, what I'll do now is, because I created a lot of dust in my shop, I'm going to let this set overnight. I'm not going to fool with it because I know if I start to put a finish on now, there'll be dust in the air and it'll get onto my project, and then I'll have to do some extra work. So I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'll let all the dust in my shop settle down, and then what I'll do is I'll come back with the tack cloth again. Any airborne dust, I'll wipe it off and make sure it's nice and clean, and then I'm ready for either my stain or my top coat. Sanding really isn't that difficult. The key is again, you don't want to put a lot of personal energy in it. If you use too high a grit, the sandpaper isn't going to do the work. You're going to do the work. So what we want to do is we want to use the lowest grit for the purpose that we need. So it's the right grit for the right purpose in the right sequence. And what we're going to do is we're going to step it up. We'll use again, the processes go repair, prepare, and then finish. For the repair phase, 80 to 100 grit. For the prepare phase, 120, which is kind of the workhorse grit. It's where most projects start if they don't need a lot of repair work. And then we go up to 180. If we're going to clear coat, if we're going to stain, we stop at 180. If we're going to use an oil, then what we need to do is we need to go up to a 320 to a 400 grit sandpaper, because what will happen is the oil actually absorbs into the wood, where polyurethane and those other finishes lay on top of the wood. When they lay on top of the wood, they hide the scratches. When they absorb into the wood, they accentuate the scratches. So we need to get down a little finer with that. If you're going to put down a coat of polyurethane, I always recommend that you let it dry overnight. That the manufacturer says you can apply a second coat within 4 hours. I don't like that. I want it to dry. I want to come back and I want to be able to feel it. I want to be able to see if there's any bubbles or any runs or any problems with it. If there is, I can do a very light sanding. I can correct it, and then I put my second coat on. You always have to sand on polyurethane between coats, because polyurethane won't bind to the previous layer unless there's minor scratches in there. So then you're going to take a 120 grit, or I'm sorry, a 220 grit, and it's twice back and forth. Two times per stroke and you're done, okay? That's all you really need to do. It doesn't take a lot. It just needs a little bit to grip onto. Okay, that's it. I do have that chart available for you, so make sure you go to my website. That's paulsdiy.solutions. You can download that. I have all the rules, the rules of sanding. I have all the tips of sanding. So that's a 2-page PDF sheet that you can print. And then the chart is a single-page sheet, so you can keep that for your reference. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I'm pretty good about answering questions pretty quickly, so just post it below, and I promise I'll get back to you. Please subscribe. If you thought the video helpful, please like it for me. Okay. Again, that's it. I hope you learned something. Again, sanding is not difficult. It just has to be done in the right grit and the right sequence for the right purpose. Okay, that's it. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.